panelists as well. Mr. Pramod Kaur, Vice President PR, Mr. Jimmy Jonathan, Head of Sales India and ASEAN Autodesk, Dr. Ranjeev Rangadhive, Chairman and Managing Director, C Electric Cars, Mr. Amit Chitnis, Director, Royal Enfield UK, and Mr. Yogesh Umbarkar, Vice President, Convergent Science. So do we have all the panelists? Yes, we do. All right, welcome, gentlemen. So, Mr. Bojkar, I would request you to please start the discussion.
Thank you.
So sorry.
Hello. Excuse me. Hi.
Good. Am I audible? Good. So welcome again post the tea session. I hope that everybody is rushing after the nice lunch that we had. And obviously we had since morning a lot of sessions which were very interesting. I would just like to take a review on or recap on the situation that we faced for the last 2 years. 2 years have been literally unprecedented in the history. We have never seen this kind of situation when the industrialization was started. And the whole issues that we faced and the amount of copies that we have to go through as human beings has been very unprecedented. One of the very important factors that came for the automotive industry was the reduction and every year. So it was not only for the automotive industry, all the industries actually standstill or all. In addition to that, we saw the impact that due to globalization, all the economies are integrated, they are connected. And in short, they made this whole thing a very fragile situation. So we need to understand how these things have been working. We need to understand what we are working on and what is happening in the automotive industry. Specifically coming to the automotive industry, we will find that there are a lot of trends or a lot of things that we are learning, from which a lot of new trends or the new learnings which have been understood have been implemented by us. Coming to those, as an example, it would be like the new trends which are coming is the EV, as what we talk about since morning. So we are wanting to change EVs production, maybe digitization. And since the COVID took over, the main topic which was coming in front of us was the issue that people are not able to meet each other. So digitization became the most important parameter. So I think I'll take this one. In view of this new learnings and what we call it as a new normal, what are the new trends and how these are impacting us, our daily lives and our industry? We have already seen a couple of good presentations since morning. We have gone through the whole value chain, that is right from the designing onwards towards the actual production, manufacturing, the whole supply chain, as well as looking into the how the consumer or the customer is being serviced. So all the whole value chain, the gamut of the things we have already seen. So we will be now looking into these key trends once again, but in a different perspective, how these new trends are creating opportunities, how the new technologies are getting absorbed in the companies, and how the innovation culture is being generated. That is what we will be trying to look at. So my first question will be to Mr. Pramod Kaur and Mr. Amit Chitnis. Specifically in this COVID era, what we have seen, that we have seen significant changes happening. Yeah. With that, we have seen that a lot of companies started putting the digitization of the fast track. They started looking into ways differently. The management took a very different approach. They had to really become agile and also know new technologies, because earlier it was not really mandatory. But these all things we have seen. How did the teams were formed and how the management took the team into confidence and started working on the new normal? So this is the question which I have for both of you. So we'd like to know what are your experiences? How did your companies take the whole issue, and how did you mitigate these things? Yeah,
thank you. So I would like to basically talk about pandemic and its opportunities here. Pandemic has led to a series of opportunities, and the bigger being working in a more leaner and smarter way. So when I say leaner and smarter, it means there are two words which were coined. One was the work from home concept, and second, obviously, the era of digitization. In today's world, as an organization and looking at the culture, it was more about trusting people and trying to put that onus of trust saying, okay, you can work from anywhere, work flexibly, and still deliver. So this is more about working more in an open environment, trying to the corporations trying to having a flexible working policy in place. This all helps in terms of improving the productivity. The other part is about digitization, and I think digitization is inevitable. What we have seen is a shift. The shift is from the traditional way, the way the marketing used to operate, from on-field marketing, having all the people travel all together to marketing sites and trying to sell the product versus today's targeted digital spend. In fact, there are research reports which say that if you are having digital campaigns, that would easily lead to having customer inquiries of more than 20 to 30%. I think these are the new mantras of today's world, and they will continue to exist. And any corporation or OEM has to embrace it to move on with it.
Hello. So most of the point has been covered by Amit, but let me share my experience. So as far as we are concerned, in terms of COVID, the very first thing what we focused is about the safety of the people and ensuring a safe working environment. And there were three different stages. There was shutdown. Before shutdown, there were certain preventive activities which were required to be done, and those most of the activities were done with the help of employees only by forming small teams, and then slow startup, then going forward ramp up. So these are the three different pages we follow. Obviously, the whole focus was keeping workplace safe and ensuring the very first thing what we did is about the training, just to ensure the COVID prevention behavior is cultivated in each and every individual, and that becomes a part of our culture. Other than that, a lot of initiatives have been taken as a preventive measures in terms of ensuring social distancing is not within the company, but outside the company, during traveling, during buses. And other than that, employee involvement and empowerment was done so that that is being ensured. Second important thing is that as far as touch points are concerned, it's not about only cleaning the touch points, but reducing the touch point was one of the things what we did. And one more thing which was really important, how the PPPs are required, what we definitely implemented some new technologies like thermal screens, where most of the employees were coming on the gate, everybody's temperature was monitored, and few symptom cases were traced out to that kind of cameras. And other than that, how PP is utilized, different PPs brought, and people ensure that people are using that. And one critical thing what we did in terms of contact tracing is putting some kind of barcodes to the individual. So every employee has his ID and it was having barcoding. So in case of somebody finds COVID positive, then contact tracing become positive. So this is something which we did in terms of art, but what really made a big change to us is that in crisis, it ensures that we can become more creative and innovative. This time of crisis offered an opportunity for rapid growth or rapid acceleration of digitalization. So as far as we are concerned, one example which I would like to quote is that one complete assembly line of 1.2 liter engine, petrol engine was procured from Houston, China. And the COVID started in China, and then it was initial phase, and then they went under lockdown. Then we have to go for our own line. So for installation commission of complete line, initially it was supposed that 40 engineers from China were supposed to come here for installation commissioning. But unfortunately, during lockdown, this transition is impossible. But through VR, initially we did training of most of the engineers working in our plant. Then we put a lot of setups. We started using a lot of innovative ideas. We started using a lot of new technologies. We made vision system. So what we could do is that all the activities which are being done here in India through vision system, those were observed in Chinese sitting over there, and they used to write through different mechanism or different new technologies. And that helped us to install and commission a complete line, which is having capacity of 300,000 per annum. So it is supposed that we are supposed to make 500 in a shift, and today we are making 800 engines out of that 500 in one shift and 300 in the second shift. So that is a great success, which became possible is only because of digitalization. You know, at that time, as you rightly said, we started focusing more from work from home, and that definitely helped us through digitalization. There are a lot of travels and face-to-face business meeting got converted into a virtual meeting. Other than that, a very important thing what we did is that we started implementing a lot of initiative, a lot of projects under the initiative of Industry 4 and IoT. As of now, machines, preventive and predictive maintenance of machines, as well as the quality parameters are being monitored through these IoT technologies. Other than that, during such COVID situation, it was very difficult for us to manage our supply chain management. Even the suppliers management was very difficult, especially the suppliers who were operating with the help of labors from North India. There we supported by giving our labors so that initially we started and then started ramping up. So these are the certain things we did during the COVID period. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. I think that we have a very good insight on how the operations were ensured. The next question which should be there for Mr. Amit again, for you, Mr. Koth, and we'll take Mr. Jonathan as well. We have seen the first and second wave of COVID. It doesn't mean that the next steps or the next upcoming Omicron, yeah, so things are going to be still there with us. How are the companies making themselves resilient to this? How the mitigation is happening? How we are ensuring the business continuity in the future? Some of the steps have already been initiated, but is there any deep thought about how the leadership looks into a strategic initiative to ensure this kinds of situation, even if they arise, you are still in a position to ensure the business continuity? That is one. The other topic which we faced was very serious issues related with the supply chain. This was very disrupted worldwide. In all respects of our life, we have seen big issues in terms of the supply chain. So taking the cues about these two major topics, two major shutdowns or lockdowns, what are how do you think the journey will be ahead?
The very first thing is that the focus on people will remain always there, because we have to ensure safety of the people, and that is one thing what we have done. And irrespective of COVID is yet to move, is go out of the situation, still we have to ensure that people's conditions are health is being monitored and ensure that people's safety is ensured. So that will continue. In terms of digitalization, definitely a lot of things are starting going in. Application of Industry 4, IoT, and these things is going to be a new normal for us. And for the same training, upskilling and reskilling is the activity which is really quite to be done, and that is what everybody has to start, and we also have started. One, as far as supply chain is concerned, one big change is which is supposed to happen, it should happen, is that there used to be a concept of JIT and JIT, just in sequence and just in time. But now JIT has moved to JIS, just in case if somewhere something goes wrong, how are you going to predict? So the digitalization is going to definitely help us. This analytics is going to predict some kind of uncertainties in future, and that is one thing which we have started practicing going forward. Other than that, being innovative is the only key. And definitely one thing what we have learned out of this COVID is that supply chain is going to be slightly different. It can't be made resilient overnight. So localization through regionalization, bringing a lot of supplies near to the company, or things which are being imported, can it be localized? That is one aspect on which we are working very hard right now. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think Mr. Koth just answered everything on this. What is important is, like he was saying, more about localization versus regionalization. And important part is we all have experienced how the container cost has gone up significantly from $6,000 or $4,000 in pre-COVID to almost $12,000 and $4,000, $14,000. So I think it's like more lessons to be learned from this as to how you could not only leverage from your tier one supplier, but also explore the entire value chain, right to the end supplier, which could be tier three, tier four, and try and form more of a strategic alliance or partnership to say how we can ensure continuity of supplies to have a consistent framework in delivery. Likewise, I think you would have experienced and seen the base metal pricing, typically for the ICE segment where rhodium, aluminum, palladium, the pricing has just skyrocketed. And in fact, there are research reports which are saying that there is a deficit, a world over deficit in a shipment of aluminum and palladium as well as rhodium. So all these are going to impact. It's the key is to deliver on time. How can you ensure your own supply chains as an OEM is robust enough to ensure timely supplies in the future?
To talk about the business continuity, I think the lockdown has brought about a significant change in mindset. But in terms, what I mean to say is companies need to become more flexible in the way they take decisions. You brought up a right point over there about work from home, which is a new norm now. They need to accept that. And they need to adopt new tools, strategies. They also need to look at how they can upscale or downscale technology depending upon their usage, their needs, and also embrace that that this is what it's going to be in the future, and look at accelerating their digital transformation.
Okay, thank you. That was quite insightful from three of you. Taking again the cue from that, the most important point that we have to look into is last 2 years, there have been a lot of financial constraints. So digitization and all the next steps that we are talking about do definitely need a huge amount of investments. And to have that sustenance, how are the companies planning it? How are they looking into this as a strategic, or they are looking into bringing the ROIs? What are the steps that the companies are taking is what we would like to discuss. Are there any issues that we see that now because of these financial aspects, companies are going to slow down the digitization, or they still would like to increase this pace of digitization? What is your take on this?
So I have a nice, I just remember the old story about two woodcutters. One is just chopping the tree continuously and not delivering, versus the other one who's more focused on sharpening the axe. So I think here the OEMs have a role to play in terms of ensuring that they continue to sharpen their axe. How do they do that is investing in future, in research and development, getting the right product in the market at the right price. I think very, very simple statement, but means a lot in terms of delivering to the end consumer, where OEM has to battle with the increasing cost of base pricing or the raw material, as well as ensuring that the pricing for the product reaches at a more acceptable norm, and especially in India where consumer looks at appropriate pricing or a value for money. So that's a big challenge that they need to keep in mind while delivering the product.
And in terms of technology, I think it's what we have seen is most of the companies invest heavily in technology, which they basically use 20 to 30% of functions and features. Right now, they need to be more smart enough in understanding and evaluating and deciding on technology has basic feature functionality, and they can always obviously pay per use in terms of functions that require and take it forward. I think that's where the ROI is.
Good. I think yes, there are a lot of digital tools which are available today, as you said, rightly pay per use, and there are a lot of flexible systems which are coming up, which are going to really help. That then puts up in the next stage is that we say the technology is going to come in, but then who is going to run it? Are we upskilling our people? Are we taking care that the whole organization, right from what we say, north, south, east, west, everybody is aligned to this? And how are the companies doing that? How is the top management reacting to this? Because everybody needs to be understanding what are the let's say, the deliverables from this technology. Yogesh, from your side, and as well as Mr. Rajiv Randive, I would like to understand from both of you, what is your understanding?
Sure. I think it's a very interesting question, and I think it's very relevant when we had a first lockdown. I remember, okay, just to give you a background, I am Yogesh Umberkar. I'm coming from a lot of simulation technology or digital twin technology background. So in the last 13.5 years, we've been supporting a lot of engineering companies or engineering R&D organizations. But I've seen the pace of the adoption in terms of digital technologies in the last 2 years has accelerated probably in the what I've seen in the last pre-pandemic 10 years, the same growth as we have seen. Just like in the morning also, one of my industry peer, Rafiq, has said that the Ansys business has grown significantly. Okay, and then I'm just giving you the start, like how the business has grown, because now the top management have really realized that these digital technologies are not on our wish list on the engineering side as well. Okay, so I think Amit talked about how the marketing has taken place, right, from the digital campaigns to even sales we've seen from the Viraj, but then engineering was a major part where it is very cost efficient if you really use the digital engineering tool. And now in the pandemic, what has happened was a lot of development they were doing on the physical prototype. So building a particular engine subsystem or component and testing it in on the engine test bed. It used to cost significantly, both in terms of not the cost of prototype, but also the time taken. But before pandemic, based on the labor, based on the supplier support, they were able to manage it. But then in the pandemic, particularly with the COVID situation, lockdown, they were not able to do those physical tests. They were not able to get even those prototype built overall. And then all the engineers working from home, they have no choice to adopt the simulation tools or digital engineering tool, and which has really accelerated and it has benefited them. So it has gone from wish list to the need list. So I would say that in the last, and now the way you also mentioned that that has become a kind of a habit now. So they have really seen that in the pandemic, making digital engineering is part of their regular process has helped them to save a lot of cost overall. And I would say that that is what we are seeing now, not just in engineering, but further in the calibration process. So earlier we would say in the engine or in the even your powertrain development, they used to use it for the design stage, but then they used to do in the calibration still on the physics test. Now the calibration part is also moving to the digital engineering. So across the value chain, digital engineering is on the need list and they have embraced it very well. Yeah.
I'll share my experience also. Previously, I worked on engines. Engine development was one of my projects. And we were very hands-on. We could see what is going on. We could measure it. And we were comfortable with that. We did have some software, but our main focus was running the engine on test bed and getting all the data. Also running the engine on the vehicle and things like that. Now, when I shifted to development of electric vehicle, I realized that we can't find anything by looking at the motor. We have to actually use the software only to develop the motor and to find out what is going on. There is no way we can find it without a digital tool. So it is not only important, but we can't do without it. It is absolutely essential. So that's my experience about it.
Basically, one thing is for sure, as going forward, we have to definitely move from fossil fuels, and obviously there will be a lot of alternative resources or vehicles which are about to come. As far as future productions and these are concerned, everybody is talking about being digital. Is only the reason is that nowadays there are a lot of concepts which is coming on for development of new product like workplace integration, all those things, wherein most of the things are done virtually first. And this virtually is possibilities only through digitalization. And that gives a lot of insight and that gives a lot of inputs so that product and process can be improved. And that is being done. The only thing what is really important for us that how are you going to train the existing manpower in terms of this technology and how are you going to ensure that our manforce or our workforce become more digital or friendly to digital.
I think we have seen a couple of very nice presentations from the earlier speakers related to the training and virtual training. So hands-on plus we have already gone through how AR/VR is aiding them to understand the whole processes. So I think a lot of companies will definitely make the use of that. With that, I would like to slightly go to EV you mentioned. So our problem is that in India, the EV ecosystem is still not to the extent that we are looking at. So I'd like to ask all the speakers their opinions about what is the situation and what could be done in a different way or a better way where the EV ecosystem can be enhanced and the faster implementation could be made possible.
Yeah, I think in the morning I did when Mr. Gill was presenting, who was heading the SMEV, Society of Manufacturers of Electric Vehicle. I would share my experience and maybe some of the comments will be on the personal experiences, not to be taken up. What I've seen is there are a lot of mushrooming of the startups have evolved in the last probably 5 to 10 years or last 5 years very exponentially. However, these players have literally played a game of Lego. In my language, I call it, because it's just trying to get those Chinese imported batteries, motor controller, BMS, put it in any of the retrofitted vehicle or even the new vehicle, and then their objective was just get the vehicle on the road because that's the milestone the venture VCs or the fund guys have given them. And they have never done the design right from the scratch for that particular application, whether it's for retail customer or it is for the B2B like Swiggy or Zomato guys, okay? For both of these applications, the value proposition is different and then your design philosophy has to start from that. So the innovation is what I'm coming back is that from the beginning is not being seen in the EV. However, now with one cycle completed, they are seeing what is that they have missed out, or now they are seeing, realizing is there's so many other, each door I'm seeing different vehicle from my different peer companies or startup companies. So what is the differentiation? They're not really able to really come out. What is that my vehicle is really different than the others? So the key message I would like to really give is solely I see there is a movement is happening on the R&D focus by them, but still there is a huge gap in terms of they ensuring or they realizing that differentiation is coming only when they design it from scratch and considering the end customer in mind.
Let's first talk about the infrastructure. Now, as far as the infrastructure is concerned, most of the people are talking about charging infrastructure. And they say that because charging infrastructure is not there, the vehicles are not getting sold. I really wonder, because there were no roads where the vehicles were developed. So I think these two things will move simultaneously hand in hand. It's not possible that somebody invests in infrastructure and waiting for the vehicles to start rolling so that it will start selling. It's like expecting somebody to put up petrol pumps all over the place. It doesn't happen. When there is sufficient population of the vehicle, somebody will put up a petrol pump. So that is one part. The second part is that let me also talk about innovation. I would say innovation starts from the market and not from the product. You don't first develop the product and then find somebody to buy it. You first find out that what is the need of the customer, what does he really want, and then you develop a product to meet his requirement and to enthuse him to buy it. So customer should be willing to buy your product rather than forcing him to buy it. Yeah, by subsidies and all that, I think is a way of forcing the customer literally to buy. The product should sell on its own. So the first market innovation should be to figure out where the electric vehicle can be sold with limited charging infrastructure. Now, one of the possibility, of course, is the bus. The bus is moving between two fixed points, and at the either end you can have charging infrastructure. Likewise, there are several pockets, there are several niches, market niches, where the charging infrastructure can be created at a limited point because the vehicles don't move all over the place, they move in a restricted area. There are several such examples. Those niches should be addressed first. And those may not be the mainstream products, they may be niche products. So one can look at those niche products where the vehicles need to be very silent, need to be very comfortable, and they are not moving long distances. So that's how one should really look at the market and develop a product strategy. So these are the two things I would like to say about innovation as well as infrastructure put together.
One more thing which I would like to add is that as far as EV vehicles are concerned, definitely what is going to be a success for key success is the cost. We have to be very cost effective. And to be cost effective, there are two things or the two ways. One is to improve the manufacturing efficiency and design efficiency. You see, what has been happening right now is that the real challenge for the existing manufacturing is to use existing platform to make EV vehicles. For example, what has been happening with most of the existing OEMs is that they're trying to remove the IC and trying to put the batteries over there, which has become slightly difficult for them. But going forward, there could be some kind of modular, compact, agile modules will be there, which will help them. And that is one challenge which is being faced in terms of manufacturing. Manufacturing battery in India is also slightly challenging, even though the production has started, but a lot of things are being imported. Still, the efficiently battery manufacturing is not happening. Other than that, once you move to a battery, obviously the weight of vehicle has gone up, and that is one area where we can improve our manufacturing efficiency by lightening the vehicles, by working on some different types of materials in terms of chassis or bodies. Other than design efficiency, definitely the biggest part as far as EV vehicle is concerned is the battery. How are you going to manufacture efficient battery? How are you going to design efficient battery? What kind of cells it has? What should be the charging life? What should be charging time? And other than that, some new technologies like coming like swapping of batteries and all those things where we need to work. And these are the challenges which are being faced by Indian manufacturers in India.
Thank you. In general, whatever I understood from most of the speakers over here, that we need to look at having a lot of innovative solutions. That is what is coming as a baseline. Are we doing sufficient on innovation? It stands coming to that question. Especially in India, we have seen that we don't have innovative, let's say, culture or ecosystem where we can have a lot of innovations. I think there are certain sporadic areas which are coming up. So anybody would like to put some thoughts on that, what we are doing on innovation as a country?
I mean, as you pointed, I mean, recently India has been ranked 46 on the innovation index, the global innovation index by your IP, an international property rights organization, intellectual property. And then what we have seen is this number is very well relevant to what our exports percentage is. So if you look at our domestic the economy have grown after liberalization almost 60%. with the domestic consumption, but then the export is only 80%, and that also shows how much is the made in India is perceived in the outside market. It's not much. And why that? Because we have not been able to do innovation good enough to make that global product inherently. Okay. However, having said that, I would say that in the last, let's say, a decade or so, with the startup, with the engineering, global R&D centers setting up in India, which has created a good amount of skilled engineers, and those skilled engineers joining the Indian companies have really excelled to drive that innovation as well. Obviously, if you see now, we have engineering companies, TCS, Tata Technologies, and many other. They have been forefront in terms of delivering those kind of innovative technologies to the global players, but now they have been also being considered very well for local domestic automotive companies as well. In terms of the ecosystem, what is we are seeing is apart from the industry focus, the government has put up a lot of focus on the academic and industry collaborations. We have seen the Atal incubation centers. NASSCOM has created a lot of incubation centers. I think we are having more than 350 incubation centers across India, standing third after US and China overall. The key purpose of these Atal incubation centers are to give a platform to the young engineers where they can use the digital technologies to build the innovative solutions for real world problems overall. So there is the government initiative, the industry initiative. The industry is a lot of, I think in Pune itself, it would take there's so many universities who have had maybe a startup kind of a research lab or a big company like a research lab in their academics, because they would like to pull some kind of an industry exposure given at the right age of the engineering itself. So giving that exposure also create a lot of innovation, creates that mindset that, okay, this is what in the real world I need to develop myself and create industry ready engineers overall. So yeah, this is probably I would say that there is a good momentum is picking up, and with the startup kind of a culture, I think there is a lot of innovation is popping up in various parts, some or the other way overall. I mean, I see the young Viraj as a good example, the way he has developed the Gativan, and then he has himself, as Sir said, he has seen what is the market need rather than what he has started. That's what I understand. And then they develop the product accordingly, what he is seeing the change in the market needs. And that's innovation particularly.
I would like to extend this to younger generation also. I mean, right from the school age. We see a lot of training programs for computer-based training for children right from 5th standard, 6th standard, that training has started. But there is nothing in the manufacturing industry. Now, if you see what is happening abroad, there are a lot of do-it-yourself shops which sell a number of small equipment which is suitable for doing some hobby workshop, some kind of hobby projects. And the children from about 10 years, they use all these equipment. They are not very expensive. They are not the industry level equipment. Most of the facilities that we today have are actually industry level facilities where you can make something which is a much higher level. But we don't have to start at that level. We can start at a much lower level. It could be a small, toy aircraft, for example, which many small children, 10 years, 12 years build abroad. How many such aircrafts are built here by the children? I mean, model aircrafts are not built. So these are just a kind of project, or there are some toy cars that the children build, and a lot of things children build. So this do-it-yourself culture is difficult to bring in at the scale that is there in the Europe or US. But we can do it in a smaller way. If some company agrees to sponsor, for example, if we can buy at least 1 or 2 sets of such tools and give a chance to the children who are in the school, let's say 10th or 11th standard, and give them a hands-on experience. Whatever they make need not be successful. There is no such thing as success. Let them try, let them experiment, and then some ideas come up. The idea may be marketable, idea may not be marketable. If the idea is marketable, well, if it is not marketable, nothing lost. So we have to go a level below the college level. That is my feeling. And if anyone is interested in sponsoring such a project, then I'll be glad to work on that.
It just remind me of one point. I think 2 years back I was in Korea and I was in their auto show. Okay, where because they have this Nexo as a fuel cell vehicle. As part of that fuel cell vehicle campaign, in the auto show, where typically in Delhi we see that a lot of young generation happens, but then you don't see the children unless somebody like me who try to take the children. But then they had under that Nexo campaign, they had this one particular big room with all the fuel cell kits. And then they have really given that fuel cell kit how it works, and then you can do some experiment with that. I mean, at that time, I find it really good because you are able to relate how the fuel cell work overall. And I'm saying that is at the age, as Sir said, it was for 5 to 7 standard kind of students. They were educating it with real world photo. So that's how the culture need to be built up, I would say. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think that's what happens in UK as well, where all the primary and secondary schools students, they are more inclined towards work on collaboration, which was, I think, one of the first points put in today's, I think Arindam did put that, and also working more in a creative fashion. So the creativity starts not when you become graduate, but when you are in primary school and secondary, where you start thinking differently. So that is one strategy which is followed in UK. The other is about partnerships with government. So like there's an Innovate UK body which provides grants and funding to collaborators, which are like 3 or 4 different bodies or corporations who come together to drive innovation or build something which is not in a ready state available in the market, and which is fully funded by the government to maximum extent.
Just few months back, or maybe more than 1 year back, I had been to UK along with CII team to find out the incubation centers, how the incubation centers are run in UK. And you will find that the incubation centers are very well equipped. Here, what we get is only one desk with a computer or a laptop. And they say, okay, now you sit here and innovate. That really is not feasible. What you need, particularly if you are working on something which is in the manufacturing domain, then you need independent space where you can build a prototype. For building prototype, you need the equipment or common equipment from which you can get the prototype parts made. So our incubation centers need to be completely revamped. A lot of people had been to UK along with the CII, but I don't see any action on it. So I think incubation center improvement is also very much needed.
What we have done is, we have these hackathons, so to actually, encourage all the student community to go ahead and, use the solution and try to come up with, stuff that they have in mind. What we also do is for startup community, we have licenses that we provide free, and we also have community where they can actually interact with and, get some suggestions and other things. And what we also try to do is we provide them with whatever kind of support that is required to go ahead and, make things out of what they're trying to achieve. So it's a small initiative, but I think it will go a long way.
Good. I think there are a lot of things that we have covered from the innovation perspective. This will really help this country go a long way. I think, Amita, do we have time, or I'll take the last question and then, yeah. Okay, we have gone through and seen the whole day how this has unfolded. What are the key tips that you would like to give to the automotive industry? Where you would say that these are maybe a couple of focus areas, or this is the way ahead, or something that will enable or help the automotive players.
Okay, so I think while there is a lot of talk about digitization, investment in future technologies and everything, one of the critical things for the automotive industry or any OEM or a vendor is reskilling and upskilling its labor. I think because what happens is you are not just selling the vehicle, there is a lot of after-sales support that you need to provide. And if our own workforce is not ready yet, embracing the future technological change, it will become very difficult to deliver to the end consumer. So I think that's the key insight from my.
Coming from the engineering background, I must say that they should not rely on the outside consulting firms, although I'm coming from the previous consulting firm, but as an Indian automotive community, I should say that they should try to build their in-house engineering capabilities. That will only help them to become a much more innovative and probably win the race in the global platform. That's what I can say.
I have spent a lot of years in market also, apart from R&D. And I think that the Indian vehicle manufacturers should analyze the market very carefully and find a niche where electric vehicle is required, rather than trying to give an option to the existing vehicle with the electric drive. And then you say that this has an electric drive which is similar to the existing vehicle but little more expensive, and then you will recover your money after 5 years. That argument doesn't gel well with the buyer. But if somebody needs an electric vehicle for some specific reason, then he buys it. He doesn't care about the price because he wants a product and he gets the product at a given price. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, looking at the lockdown, I think future is very uncertain. It's time to accelerate your digital transformation policy or strategy that you have. Look at technology that is available. Cloud is the next big thing in the manufacturing segment, because what we have seen is all the designers, engineers, or manufacturing units always work in silos. We have platform which can get them together, work together, incorporate, innovative techniques to improve process, get productivity out of it and reduce your head cost. So, accelerate your business digital transformation strategy is what I would say.
I think most of things are covered. Still, I would focus on two things. Say there are certain government regulations. As per the Paris Agreement, we have to reduce our carbon footprint by 30 to 35% by 2030. So obviously, we don't have any option than to move from fossil fuel to alternative fuels or renewable sources. Other than that, you see the customer needs is not only needs, but the behavior patterns also started changing. The people have started moving from ownership based to shared vehicle, shared mobility, then from shared mobility to service based. So the behavior patterns also are changing. So considering even there are few more variables, but let me speak only about these two things. So these two things are definitely going to bring a lot of changes in auto industry for sure. And the one who will survive in the auto industry is the one who will innovate, and that innovation should be customer based. What customer really wants and what kind of innovation he should do it. So what is very important for the automobile industry to grow and to sustain is to be lean, to be agile, to be adaptive, to be collaborative, and to be innovative, to meet customer expectations, customers changing needs and behaviors. Thank you.
Very much. I think we have come to, do we have time for any questions from the? Yeah, we can take a couple of questions.
Thank you, expert panels, and I really appreciate your deep thoughts in this direction. So I have a various background. I consider myself as an innovation manager. I was incubation manager at ISC Bangalore, and I've been incubating few companies. The first few things I found, as it's been mentioned, that we just have small space, but they need mentors as well as support to how to go to the market. And second point, there is no standardization available for startups. I mean, if that standardization is not available, how can it become an ecosystem? If I build a product with certain specification for another one, how may we do? These are few important things which should be considered. The other part that comes, the government had a lot of policies. The policies related to training, and I've been a part of taking about 100 young guys in the age group of class 10 to mentor them to bring innovations. So there are policies available, but in a small community, how we make yourself aware. Such forums, we would interact and share our knowledge, it will be very useful. These are a few things, but there are others as well. We'll take it offline because this has motivated me to ask many questions. At the same time, think differently how we can do together.
Which of you would like to take the question?
Typically, the policies, whatever we have seen, are again going to be governed by the COP26, which is going to come up. That is one thing which we for sure know. The whole world will be driven by those Paris agreements or the agreements which we have now for the COP26, no doubt about that. Euro 7 is out of question. So ICE slowly will be anyway going out, no doubt about that. So those things as a bottom line are already known. So there is nothing that we can do to revive the ICE. For sure, ICE will continue for a longer time, no doubt, like 2030 or maybe even more. So we are expecting 2050, 20, somewhere in that range. If you see the batteries even now, the standardization, yes, those things have to be done. There's no doubt about that. If we want to really look at the next step, where you say the batteries can be replaced, so you have just stop somewhere where the recharging has to be done. If you want to fit different battery pack, so then you're taking battery as a service. So those standardization are yet to be done. Worldwide, this need to be done. This same thing which happened with, let's say, mobiles. So you have this different type of USB connector, C connector, whatnot. This slowly will get into the standardization mode, no doubt about it. I think we will be requiring certain amount of scales is what, as we discussed. So this eventually will come because everybody will start facing this problem. And for sure, the earlier experiences are there. There are already shortlisted, let's say, connectors or how the batteries will be built, how the replacements will be done. So those actions are on. We cannot elaborate that in detail right now, but yes, those actions are on. Definitely, I can do that. Thank you.
Maybe we can take one more question and then we can. Right? Okay. So we have more questions. We can take them offline. So thank you, panelists. That was indeed a very. I think we got a lot of perspectives on the automotive industry, how it is changing, and also where it is heading. So thank you very much, all of you. Now I would like to request Ms. Ananya Chaudhary, Manager HR and Admin, to please felicitate our moderator, Mr. Krishna Bhojkar. Will we please have a round of applause? Picture. I would like to ask Mr. Dheeraj Bhalirao. I would like to request Mr. Dheeraj Bhalirao, Country Manager, India, Publish Industry, to please come on stage and felicitate Mr. Pramod Kaur, Vice President, PR. I would like to request Mr. Sagar Tamare, Business Head, India Publish Industry Private Limited, to please come on stage and felicitate Mr. Jimmy Jonathan, Head of CS India and ASEAN Autodesk. I would like to request Mr. Tarun Kumar, Head Designer at Publish Industry, to please come on stage and felicitate Dr. Rajiv Ranadive, Chairman and Managing Director of ISI Electricals, please. I would also like to request Ms. Namrata Singhania, Senior Content Developer at Publish Industry, to please come on stage and felicitate Mr. Amarjit, Ms. Director, Royal Enfield UK. I would like to request Mr. Alok Kumar, AGM Sales and Marketing, South India Publish Industry, to please come on stage and felicitate Mr. Yogesh Umbarkar, Vice President, Convergent Science. A round of applause, please. Sir, we would like to take a group picture with all of you, all the panelists, and Mr. Mojkar, our moderator. Picture, please. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. So now I would like to come to the close of our summit. I would like to invite Mr. Alok Kumar, AGM Sales and Marketing, South India Publish Industry, India Private Limited, to please come on stage and give the vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege for me to propose this vote of thanks. And as we are about to conclude our program for today, I would like to thank you all our sponsors for extending their support to us. I would also like to extend my gratitude to all association partner and media partner who agreed to come on board for this event. Sincere thanks to all our distinguished speakers, panelists who held very informative sessions throughout the day and who spare time out of their packed schedule to attend this event. Lastly, we would like to extend our regards to all the delegates who joined us today. We will see you soon for the 4th edition of International Automotive Manufacturing Summit. Till then, goodbye and take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Alok. Thank you, everyone. It has been absolutely lovely and a lovely pleasure. So we'll all see you soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Oh yes, about the feedback form, all of you have a feedback form in your delegate kits. Yes, so please fill them up and pass them on to Ananya Chaudhary, our HR. She's standing right here, so you please pass them on to her.